Good evening. And tonight you step into the bizarre rules every 1960s Brit followed without question, in a semi-detached house in the English Midlands, where the BBC could decide the official mood of your morning before your feet even touched the floor. Welcome back to Eunice in Nairobi and Megan in Yorkshire, who both commented on the last video and stayed until the end. And I am glad you are here again. Tell me where you are and what time it is for you, just like Eunice and Megan did. And if you like these sleepy little journeys, please like and subscribe so you can fall asleep easily with each new episode. Have you ever noticed how a whole day can feel settled before you have even opened the curtains? Then the wireless clears its throat and the house takes over. The bedroom air is cool and faintly dusty, and somewhere below you, the gas cooker rattles against formica while coal smoke and old cabbage linger softly in the hall. Downstairs, someone is already shaking yesterday's ash from the grate. Because in spring 1965, even your first shiver has a timetable. You do not wake to silence. You wake in the middle of a sentence. The BBC announcer has already begun without you. He has that calm voice which suggests the country should have been upright 10 minutes ago. The bedside wireless sits on its little table like a patient brown brick. Its dial glows a sleepy amber. The sound comes through with a faint dry crackle, as if the news has traveled in a sensible overcoat. Nobody asks whether you want the bulletin first. The bulletin simply arrives. It arrives before your slippers. It arrives before your thoughts have put on their clothes. This is the first rule of the morning. The BBC Home Service is not quite an alarm clock. It is more like a national uncle in a dark suit. It assumes you are ready to hear about cloud, ministers, roads, and the general tone of things. You lie still for one more moment under the heavy blankets. The sheets are cool at the edges. The pillow is slightly flattened on one side. The eiderdown has that smooth cotton feel which always seems warmer in theory than in fact. Outside, a Midland spring morning waits in its usual gray way. It is not gloomy, it is simply undecided. A strip of pale light shows at the curtain edge, and a blackbird somewhere is trying to sound more hopeful than the sky. The announcer speaks in received pronunciation. His vowels are neat. His consonants arrive on time. He sounds like a man who has never once lost a sock in the wash, and perhaps never intends to. This voice does not shout. It does something far more effective. It makes everything sound settled already. If he says the weather will be changeable, then the weather becomes changeable in a deep and accepted moral sense. You could, in theory, turn him off, but that would be faintly improper. The Home Service is essentially Spotify, except you have no say in the playlist, and it seems to judge you, very gently, for switching off during the morning bulletin. So you listen. You listen because everyone else is listening too. In kitchens and bedrooms and narrow terraces and new estates, the same voice is entering the day at almost the same moment. The nation is being tuned like a wireless set with one very firm hand. There is comfort in that. It is a little bossy, of course. It is bossy in the way a railway timetable is bossy. Yet it also saves you the trouble of choosing what to feel before breakfast. If the announcer sounds brisk, the day is brisk. If he sounds sober, the marmalade goes on the toast more quietly. If he says there may be rain later, then your washing line plans shrink at once, without protest, like wool in an unkind basin. You push back the blankets. The cold nips first at your wrists. Then it reaches your ankles with some confidence. You sit up with that slow, straight-backed movement known to every person who has ever slept in a cool British house. Your dressing gown waits at the chair. You slip your arms into it and pull the belt around your middle. The fabric is slightly shiny at the cuffs from years of faithful service. Your slippers are where you left them, which already feels like a small domestic triumph. The landing boards complain in the familiar places. The house is awake in pieces. A pipe ticks somewhere in the wall. A door below closes with care. The faintest smell of damp coal and boiled greens hangs in the air like an old family opinion. The front room door stays shut. That room is for best. It has the patterned Axminster carpet and the larger chairs and the black and white television in the corner. The set waits there like a small, dignified altar, not yet open for worship. Morning belongs to the kitchen and the grate. This is another rule. Before tea, before chat, before any airy ideas about what the day may hold, Someone must see to the fire. Preferably you, certainly not the BBC. The coal fire is never dramatic. It is simply necessary. It is the practical heart of the house. In spring, the mornings still have a sharp edge, and nobody respectable wants to eat toast with a room full of yesterday's chill. So you go downstairs. Your hand trails along the banister that has been polished by many other sleepy hands. The stair carpet is worn down the middle. At the bottom, the hallway holds its own weather, half cool, half stale warm, with a little coal dust always seeming to wait in the corners. The grate looks faintly offended by being empty. Yesterday's ash sits gray and soft in the pan. A few darker lumps remain like survivors of an argument nobody remembers. Beside the hearth are newspaper, kindling, a shovel, and a bucket of coal with its black, clean shine. You crouch in your slippers. This is not elegant, and nobody expects it to be. Mourning in 1965 has many rules, but grace is not one of them. Competence will do very nicely. First, you clear the ash. The pan comes out with a dry scrape. A little cloud lifts and settles again. The smell is dusty and familiar, like old pennies and damp paper and last week's weather. Then the new layer begins. A crumpled sheet of newspaper goes in first. The headlines disappear into a useful ball. Then come the little sticks, light and thin, crossing each other like a patient game. After that, the coal. Not too much at once, not too little either. This is one of those exact British measurements that nobody writes down and everyone somehow criticizes. Mrs. Grimshaw next door would certainly have a view. Mrs. Grimshaw has a view on coal size, on bread freshness, on curtain hems, and on the character revealed by buying tinned peaches in syrup. She can appear at the garden fence while you are holding a shovel, and greet you with the bright face of a woman arriving at her own private matinee. She is not here yet, but you can feel her in the air all the same. Some neighbors produce smoke. Mrs. Grimshaw produces opinion. It drifts over the fence much faster. You strike the match. The flame blooms small and brave. You touch it to the paper, and the paper catches with that quick, eager sound which always feels encouraging. For a minute, the fire behaves like a promising child at school assembly. Then you wait. This is part of the work. A coal fire rewards patience and punishes fussing. If you prod too soon, it sulks. If you leave it dignified and alone, it usually decides to cooperate. Only when you see a proper glow does the next task begin. Tea may be beloved in Britain. Tea may seem eternal. Tea may even feel like the purpose of the empire, though that is a thought best left half asleep. But the fire comes first. This rule is so deep that nobody quite says it aloud. You can make tea on the gas cooker, of course. That is perfectly possible. But a cold room with a hot cup in it feels morally untidy, like wearing your hat indoors or praising margarine too warmly. So the fire is set to its little orange work. Now the kitchen may be trusted with the next ceremony. You move through the narrow doorway, and the familiar formica surface catches the weak light. The gas cooker gives one of its small metallic rattles, as if clearing its own throat for duty. The kitchen is modest and busy-looking even when still. There is a bread bin, there is a tin for tea, there is a dishcloth hanging near the sink that has seen better mornings. A bottle of milk waits by the back step, with cream resting at the top like a private luxury. You set the kettle on. The ring clicks, then catches with blue flame. A faint hiss begins at once. The kettle is not in a hurry, but neither are you, which suits both parties well. The first cup of tea is never just a drink. It is the soft opening of the house. It is permission to become human. It is also an exam, and every household has its marking system. Some homes swear by loose tea in a pot. Some have begun to flirt with tea bags, though not everyone trusts them, and not everyone admits that. In many kitchens, the best method is still one spoon for each person and one for the pot, even if the pot seems entirely capable of making its own arrangements. You warm the pot first. This matters to the serious. A little hot water swirled round the inside makes the china feel ready. Then the leaves go in, with a dry rustle and a smell like warmth itself. Milk waits nearby in a little jug or straight from the bottle. Sugar has its bowl and spoon. Cups stand ready on the draining board or on the table. Each one has its own hairline history, and each one is somehow the right cup for someone, though nobody would call it a system. There are many tiny laws around tea. The color must be right. The strength must be right. It should taste awake but not punishing. It should never look as though it might stand up by itself and ask after your insurance details. You pour with care. The stream darkens the cup. The smell rises at once and changes the room. A kitchen without tea is a place of tasks, but a kitchen with tea becomes a place where life may proceed. Conversation, if any, begins now. Before the first cup, speech is practical and thin. Someone may say, "Kettle on," or "Mind the ash." After the first sip, a person can attempt full sentences and mean them. That first sip is always a little too hot. You know this. Everybody knows this. Yet everybody takes it anyway, with that determined little caution which has launched 1,000 British mornings. The wireless has followed you down in spirit, if not in body. In some houses there is another set in the kitchen. In others, the bedroom voice still filters through floorboards and doors in soft pieces. Either way, the announcer remains in charge of the national atmosphere. He tells you the weather now. There may be bright intervals. There may be showers moving eastward. There may be a phrase like, "becoming cooler later," which sounds less like weather and more like a quiet decision from management. You accept his terms. If he says it will be fair after lunch, then perhaps the washing may venture out. If he says there will be mist in places, then the whole street becomes a street of mist in places, even before anyone has looked properly. This is what morning authority sounds like. It is not loud. It is not bullying. It simply occupies the room so neatly that your own opinions feel untucked by comparison. A strange thing happens in a world like this. The news does not merely tell you events. It sets your posture. It arranges the emotional furniture. A calm bulletin produces a calm breakfast, and a fussy bulletin gives the marmalade a faint burden. You may hear about prices, you may hear about Parliament, you may hear about strikes, or roads, or ships, or schools, though always in that same even tone. The announcer could describe a damp hedge or a change in policy with almost identical manners. That evenness matters. It smooths the day before the day can start rumpling. It means every item arrives dressed properly. Nothing appears in a dressing gown, even if you are still wearing yours. You carry your cup to the table. The oilcloth is cool under your fingers. A bit of sunlight has found the corner near the breadboard. The toaster, if you have one, looks solid and unromantic, and the grill on the cooker is already considering the bread. Breakfast is plain and dependable. Toast if there is time, bread and margarine if there is less time. Perhaps marmalade, perhaps jam, perhaps a boiled egg if the morning is feeling grand and nobody has forgotten to put water on. The smell of toast joins the tea. This is one of the finest alliances in domestic history. It fills the kitchen with a soft brown comfort that can forgive almost anything, including weather and bills and the continued existence of drafts. The house begins to sound inhabited. A cup touches a saucer. A spoon taps once against china. The fire gives a more confident little crack from the next room, proving you judged the coal correctly and may continue with the day. Now your mind turns to clothes. The bulletin has already had its say about them. A promise of chill air means an extra layer. A hint of sun means only that the cardigan may be removed later with ceremony. You dress by forecast and by habit. Under things first, briskly and without romance. Then shirt or blouse, skirt or trousers, depending on the day and the work. Buttons are done with fingers not yet fully awake, which gives the whole process a grave, concentrated dignity. Socks matter more than speeches. A good pair decides the comfort of your morning. Shoes wait by the door, sensible and polished enough to pass unnoticed. In 1965, much of respectability consists of being tidy enough not to start a conversation. The mirror in the hall offers a practical view. Hair is coaxed into order. A face is washed with cool water that always feels more honest than kind. If you are shaving, the brush and soap perform their own small foamy ritual beside the basin. The announcer continues on the wireless. He does not seem to breathe much. He certainly does not dither. He moves from one item to the next with the same polished glide. As if the nation were a neat stack of papers he has already arranged. You begin to see the deeper rule. Morning is not truly yours yet. It belongs first to procedure. It belongs to fire, tea, weather, news, and proper clothes, in that order or very near it. Even your mood is a shared utility. If the home service sounds cheerful, it is a cheerful morning in Wolverhampton and Coventry and Leicester and all the roads between. If it sounds sober, then the buses carry a slightly more sober silence. A modern person might call this strange. A 1965 person would call it Tuesday. When everybody receives the same bulletin in the same careful tones, the edges of private feeling become a little less fussy. The day comes pre-folded. There is a kind of relief in that. You do not need to scroll. You do not need to choose between 20 voices all trying to be your nearest thought. One voice arrives, says what sort of morning it is, and the country nods into its tea. The black and white television still sleeps in the front room. It will have its turn later. For now it squats in silence with its polished screen and wooden cabinet. Evening belongs to it, but morning is the announcer's kingdom. You can feel the town waking beyond the semi-detached walls. A gate clicks somewhere. Milk bottles clink. A bicycle rolls past on damp pavement. Farther off, a bus changes gear with the weary authority of public transport doing exactly what it has always done. The street itself has its own rules. Curtains open in a certain rhythm. Front steps are brushed when needed. A net curtain may twitch, though never very much, because everyone must preserve the fiction that nobody is looking. Mrs. Grimshaw preserves this fiction beautifully. She can identify the price of your new saucepan from 30 feet away, while also pretending to admire your rhubarb. She is a remarkable woman. If she ever worked for the tax office, the nation would be run entirely on whispered receipts. For now she remains next door, but you know she is awake. Women like Mrs. Grimshaw are always awake slightly before the official start of things. They are the unpaid deputy governors of the street. The morning bulletin helps them greatly. It gives them public material. If the announcer mentions a cold snap, Mrs. Grimshaw can discuss your coats. If he mentions rising prices, she can ask what you paid for your mince with almost charitable interest. You make another piece of toast. It is very easy to make a second piece once the first exists. This is a law older than most governments. The smell alone argues the case very persuasively. Butter, if you have it, sinks in at once. Margarine spreads more firmly and leaves its own pale gloss. Jam sits bright and cheerful on top, while marmalade looks serious and useful, like breakfast for people who intend to answer letters. Tea is poured again, if there is enough in the pot. There should be enough in the pot. If there is not, someone misjudged matters. Misjudging tea at breakfast is not a scandal, but it is a disappointment of a properly British sort. The first cup wakes the house. The second cup allows opinion. By the second cup, a person may say the forecast seems doubtful, or the minister sounded tired, or the neighbor's cat has once again chosen the wrong flower bed. Without tea, such thoughts remain indoors. Tea does not solve anything. It simply puts a handle on the day. That is often enough. The announcer reads the time. This, too, is useful. Time on the wireless feels more official than time on the clock above the mantel. Clocks in houses may drift, sulk, or gain ambition, but the BBC time belongs to a grander order. You trust it instinctively. If you are late against the kitchen clock, you may argue. If you are late against the BBC, you are simply late. There is no appeal. This is how quiet governance works. No one marches in. No one points. A polite voice says the time, the weather, and the first headlines, and by 7:30, your entire inner life has been arranged into neat, practical drawers. Even your errands begin to shape themselves. Bread from the baker if needed. A stop at Mr. Higgins's corner shop for tea, sugar, and perhaps something from a shelf that claims to be convenient. Mr. Higgins always recommends Spam, with the tender feeling of a man defending family honor. He also keeps the tick book. This makes his shop the original buy now, pay later service. Except your credit limit depends entirely on whether he thinks you are the sort of person who returns Pyrex dishes. He writes figures in that book, with the gravity of a bishop keeping score. The pre-decimal coins await you later. A handful of florins and shillings can make any adult look briefly mystical. You stand at a counter and count little silver pieces, as if interpreting signs from a friendly but confusing universe. The 3-penny bit sits among them like a tiny brass joke. But that muddle belongs to later. Morning still has a cleaner shape. In mourning, there is fire, tea, toast, weather, and dress. The coins can wait in a purse for their daily chance to embarrass you publicly. Sunday has its own trap, of course. The thing you most need will always become urgent on Sunday. It will be a bulb, or aspirin, or milk, or something dull and essential. Then every single shop in Britain will remain shut with legal calm until Monday, as if the whole country has agreed to teach you foresight. But this is not Sunday. Today the shops exist. Today the bus runs. Today Mr. Higgins may attempt to sell you a tin whose label suggests curry, but whose contents suggest apology. For now the kitchen remains kind. Steam dims the lower window a little. The tea cozy sits over the pot like a knitted hen guarding treasure. The sink holds a cup or two from yesterday evening, because real life rarely leaves every surface shining at dawn. You hear the fire settle in the grate. That sound is a comfort all by itself. It means the room next door is losing its bite. It means the house is being persuaded, slowly and correctly, to join the day. There is a reason coal comes before conversation. A lit fire gives people better manners. It softens floors and voices and judgments. Even an awkward breakfast seems more forgivable when the grate is glowing properly. You might open the back door for a moment. Only for a moment. The yard air is sharp and wet, with the smell of earth, brick, and washing lines. A few clouds move over the town in a thoughtful way, and the fences are still silvered with the damp of early spring. The milk bottle waits where it was left. Cold glass, little foil top, cream thick beneath it. You bring it in with the solemn satisfaction of a person completing one more correct act in a world held together by correct acts. In houses like this, routine is not dull. It is architecture. It tells you where to stand and what to do next. It saves you from the chaos of inventing every morning afresh. The home service fits neatly into that structure. It does not entertain you in the modern sense. It informs you and steadies you. It is background and backbone at once. That may be the strangest rule of all. A disembodied voice, speaking perfect careful English, can set the emotional register for millions before breakfast. And almost nobody finds this odd. It is simply how the day enters the room. You look at the clock again. You finish the last of the toast crusts. You put your cup in the sink, or leave it for one more minute, which feels wicked and ordinary in equal measure. The house now smells of tea leaves, warm bread, and faint coal smoke. It smells like being on schedule. And in 1965, being on schedule is a moral pleasure. Not a thrilling pleasure, not a boastful one, just the quiet contentment of knowing the kettle boiled when it should, the fire caught when it should, and the announcer has approved the weather. Soon the street will be fully in motion. Doors will open, shopping bags will appear. Someone will call to someone else over a hedge. Mrs. Grimshaw may materialize by the fence, just as you are carrying out something awkward and impossible to set down. She will smile too brightly. She will somehow know exactly what you paid for your new tea caddy. And she will say it was very nice, in a way that contains several footnotes. This is one of the social textures of the age, like net curtains and sensible shoes. Yet even Mrs. Grimshaw obeys the same morning master. She has heard the same voice. She knows the same forecast. She has had the same first lesson in what kind of Tuesday this is likely to be. So have you. You may think you are just waking up in your own house. In truth, you are joining a national timetable of tea, weather, and quiet obedience, arranged by a man you have never met and already trust. The strangest part is how cozy it feels. There is comfort in being told gently that the morning has begun. There is comfort in not deciding everything yourself before the kettle sings. There is comfort in hearing the world arrive in proper order. The fire glows more steadily now. The kitchen has warmed by a degree or two. Your cup leaves a pale ring on the table if you are careless, which someone will notice later. The day has taken shape around these ordinary little proofs of existence. You are no longer between sleep and waking. You are in 1965 properly now. Your slippers have crossed the cold floor. Your tea has been judged a success. Your thoughts are lined up behind the announcer's measured voice like children after assembly. And that is how the rules work. They do not bark, they settle. They enter the body through habit, through weather, through the need to get warm and get on. Before long, you are following them with the peaceful certainty of a person who has never known another way. So you stand in the kitchen of your semi-detached house, with the formica top cool under one hand and the morning bulletin moving on, while the first proper heat from the coal grate reaches the doorway and the announcer, having already decided the nation's tone, tells you what sort of day you are allowed to have. The need for bread arrives in the small, dull way most needs arrive, in 1965. You stand in the formica kitchen and lift the tin lid. Inside there are only crumbs and one current that escaped all useful plans. The gas cooker gives its soft rattle behind you. A faint smell of boiled cabbage still hangs in the hallway. Coal dust drifts in from somewhere mysterious, as it always seems to, in a Midland spring. You fetch your purse from the shelf by the back door. It has the solid, worrying weight of metal, rather than the light promise of notes. This is never as comforting as it first seems. A loaf should be simple. A loaf is flour and yeast and a little patience. Yet before you even reach the gate, the loaf has become a question in arithmetic. You tip the purse into your palm and study the little heap. There's a 6pence, 2 pennies, something half hidden, and 1 coin shaped like a tiny brass button. There may be enough money for bread. There may also be enough money to buy half Birmingham. Pre-decimal coins produce this feeling often. They ask you to do sums in public, while pretending you were born knowing them. You know the broad map of it, of course. There are 12 pence in a shilling. There are 20 shillings in a pound. There are also enough smaller stops and detours to keep a schoolmaster cheerful for years. A farthing is a quarter of a penny. A halfpenny is not half a shilling, which would almost make sense. A 3-penny bit is small and thick and shaped like it resents your fingers. The florin looks important and feels cool in the hand. The half-crown sounds grand and buys less than the name suggests. The whole system feels like furniture inherited from an aunt who loved labels more than comfort. You can manage it at home, with the table under your elbows and no witness but the sugar bowl. You line up coins in patient little rows. You whisper numbers to yourself like a mild prayer. The trouble starts at the counter. The queue is behind you. Mr. Higgins is watching with his kind, wounded shopkeeper face. Suddenly, 12 pence seem to slip and slide about like wet soap. You tuck the purse shut and step into the back garden. The fence is waiting. Mrs. Grimshaw rises beside it at once, like a woman operated by a hidden spring under the rhubarb. "Off to the shops, are you?" she asks, while clearly knowing you are off to the shops. She glances at your coat and your shoes and somehow at your budget. She always looks slightly too cheerful when other people need things. You say it is only bread. She says bread has gone up again, as everything has, except standards. Then she asks whether you still buy from Mr. Higgins, who charges exactly what everyone else charges. Mrs. Grimshaw already knows what you paid for the last tin of peaches. She says she would never keep a tick, though she says this in the tone of someone who keeps several. You nod and slip through the gate before she can price your socks. The street is quiet in the mild afternoon light. A milk float hums somewhere far off, soft as a large lazy bee. Curtains twitch in front rooms where the black and white television waits for later instructions from London. The BBC has probably just informed half the country what sort of day it is. On the wireless, the voice will be calm and final. The home service is rather like Spotify, except you have no say and it quietly doubts your upbringing. You turn toward the corner shop with your purse gripped in one hand. The pavement is damp in patches from an earlier shower. Someone nearby is frying onions, which makes the whole street seem briefly richer. Mr. Higgins's shop sits where the road bends toward the bus stop. Its window is packed with neat towers of biscuits and tea. A cardboard sign promises value in a tone that suggests value is a moral quality. The bell over the door gives a tired ring when you enter. Warm air holds the smell of tea, soap flakes, paraffin, and oranges at Christmas, long after Christmas is gone. The floorboards have a certain opinion about every step. This is not a place where you rush. A corner shop is not only a shop. It is a small office, a newsroom, a weather station, and a tribunal for domestic choices. You may arrive for bread, but you will also hear whose son has passed his exams. You will learn whether the butcher's van was late again. You may even receive guidance on tinned ham from a man who takes tins personally. Mr. Higgins stands behind the counter in his brown coat. He has the careful air of someone who can reach any shelf blindfolded. He also has the memory of a ledger clerk who fears no decimal, though decimal has not yet arrived. He nods before you speak. He already knows why you are here. Bread, tea, milk, and apology all pass across this counter in such steady amounts that guessing is hardly needed. There are 2 loaves left in the rack. One is sliced and wrapped in waxed paper. The other is plain and unsliced and seems to belong to a sterner branch of the family. You choose the sliced loaf because your knife never behaves evenly. Mr. Higgins approves this with a small grunt. He reaches up for it without turning around, like a pianist finding the right key in the dark. You glance along the shelves while he wraps the change from the last customer. The range is small enough to learn by heart. There are baked beans, corned beef, jam, tea, condensed milk, biscuits, and many tins with a brave look. Fresh fruit comes in a narrow cast of regulars. Apples appear, and oranges when the season and the budget agree. Bananas are a treat with a faint green stubbornness, and no one expects avocados to turn up and start a conversation. The vegetables are honest and local and slightly damp. Potatoes sit in a sack like a sleeping crowd. Carrots, onions, turnips, and cabbage wait without glamour, which is perfectly fitting for Tuesday. No one wanders in asking for aubergines. No one leans on the counter demanding fresh basil. If you mentioned a courgette, Mr. Higgins would assume it was either a medical condition or an Italian cousin. You can buy tinned pineapple rings if the world is being adventurous. You can buy grapefruit segments in syrup if someone is feeling modern. Both come with a hint of ceremony, as though opening the tin counts as travel. The foreign section, if one can call it that, occupies less space than a tea towel. A jar of olives might appear near Christmas, looking rather lost. Spaghetti comes in a tin, which seems to settle the matter of Mediterranean life quite firmly. Mr. Higgins notices your glance and clears his throat. He recommends Spam with the deep conviction of a man defending the very shape of lunch. To refuse would wound him in a place medicine cannot easily reach. You say not today, very gently. He inclines his head in the grave manner of a statesman receiving difficult news. Somewhere in the shelves, the tins continue to believe in themselves. The woman before you buys woodbines, 2 onions, and a packet of custard powder. Mr. Higgins asks after her mother and remembers the cough from last week. This takes time, and time is understood to belong partly to the shop. Nobody calls this inefficiency. Nobody checks a wristwatch with pointed little sighs. Standing in line is part waiting and part listening, and by the end, you know who has switched coal merchants. This is why a corner shop is never merely retail. It is a web of little debts and favors, made mostly of memory. Mr. Higgins knows which house prefers thick-cut marmalade and which one only buys it after visitors. He knows who is short of cash before payday. He knows who had a new pram delivered yesterday. He knows whose husband is away at a trade fair, because the bacon order changes when that happens. Your turn comes, and he sets the loaf on the counter. The paper bag gives a dry, crisp rustle. It is an ordinary sound, but it always suggests supper is still possible. That all? He asks, though he knows it is rarely all. The shelves have a steady talent for reminding you of forgotten things. You add tea, then a packet of digestives, then 1 light bulb, because foresight feels daring today. The light bulb is wrapped in a thin cardboard sleeve. It seems too delicate for the trip home. Buying it gives you the foolish thrill of a person who may outwit Sunday for once. Mr. Higgins writes the items on a scrap in pencil. Bread, tea, biscuits, bulb. The little list looks harmless enough, until the coins must begin speaking to each other. Now comes the purse again. You open it under the full glow of public attention. There is a half-crown after all, which feels lucky until you must place it beside shillings and pence with dignity. The total arrives in the old music of the till. 2 shillings and some pence. Not enough pence to be easy, and not enough shillings to be grand. Exactly the sort of amount designed to test your schooling. You start with the half-crown because it sounds decisive. Then doubt moves in. A half-crown is 2 shillings and 6 pence, which is useful, except when it is suddenly much too useful and needs trimming. You add a penny and then remove it again. You find a 3-penny bit and wonder if that improves matters. Its 12 little sides press into your fingertip, as if urging confidence it has not earned. The queue behind you becomes politely silent. This is the British way of creating pressure without movement. No one sighs, and this is far worse than sighing. You look at the sixpence as if it might offer advice. In another age, perhaps scholars studied Latin, Greek, and the proper use of the florin. Mr. Higgins waits with the patience of a parish clock. He has seen this struggle all day, every day, for years. He could probably settle the empire's accounts with a saucer of mixed copper. At last you slide over a cluster of coins that seems respectable. It contains enough shapes to suggest earnest effort. Whether it equals the stated amount is harder to say. Mr. Higgins sorts them with 2 quick fingers. He does not even look down for the first few seconds. Coins click on the counter in a neat private language you never quite learn. He removes 1 penny. He adds back the 6pence. He takes the half-crown and replaces it with 2 shillings and a 3-penny bit. Then he nods, which means your bread has been achieved and the nation may continue. This is the quiet miracle of the old money. Ordinary adults spend entire lives half certain they have either underpaid or accidentally offered to purchase the shop itself. The system survives by mutual tact and sturdy nerves. You are handed change that includes a florin, though you did not knowingly begin with one. This happens often. Coins go in and out of a purse like actors changing costume behind a curtain. The pre-decimal purse is never truly mastered. It is merely endured with grace. School arithmetic meets soft leather and vanishes into a handful of metal shapes. Then Mr. Higgins asks, in a casual voice, whether you would like to put it on the book. The question lands softly. It carries no shame when properly handled, but it asks for care. The tick book lies behind the counter near the cigarettes and string. It is thick, dark, and serious. It has the patient authority of a family Bible, though its gospel is mostly butter and tea. Buying on tick is not an emergency measure in the dramatic sense. It is woven into the month. Payday comes when it comes, and bread comes when it must, so the two are introduced by pencil. You do not ask for it with flourish. You do not discuss it loudly while strangers compare jam prices. You simply lower your voice a little and say, "If you would, Mr. Higgins." He draws the book near and wets the pencil point with his tongue. There is your name. There is your street. There are last week's sausages, Tuesday's margarine, and the mysterious extra cocoa no one remembers approving. The tick book is basically a 1960s Amazon Prime account. The delivery window is sometime after Mr. Higgins finishes his second cup of tea. The credit limit depends almost entirely on his view of your character. That view is shaped by many things. Prompt payment helps, of course. So does not complaining over pennies, not sending children with vague instructions, and not pretending you never ordered the sardines. The book is private in theory and public in practice. Mr. Higgins never reads entries aloud, yet everyone understands that he knows exactly who is carrying a larger total than comfort advises. This creates a careful dance in the shop. If your debt is small, you may mention next week's wages with an airy smile. If it is larger, you discuss the weather and keep your eyes on the biscuits. No one wants to seem grand about credit. No one wants to seem desperate either. The best tone is brisk gratitude, as though this arrangement is ordinary, which in fact it is. Mr. Higgins writes the new amount in a hand so neat, it seems almost printed. Each item sits in line with the next. Bread does not sprawl into tea, and biscuits know their exact place. The pencil makes a small, dry sound on the page. It is one of the true sounds of neighborhood trust. The whole business rests on paper, memory, and the belief that nobody is about to move to Coventry overnight. You sign nothing. There is no stamp and no rubber approval. There is only the shopkeeper, the book, and your own wish not to look slippery in front of the district. This gives the debt its own social weight. Owing a bank is distant and dull. Owing Mr. Higgins means owing the man who asks after your aunt and notices when you switch biscuit brands. You feel the difference in your shoulders as you put the purse away. The loaf now belongs to you, but so does a small new line in the book. It is not frightening. It is simply there, like the washing up. Mrs. Grimshaw once said she would rather starve than buy on tick. She said this while borrowing 2 eggs over the fence. Some rules are spoken. Others arrive carrying an empty basin. Mr. Higgins slips your loaf into a paper bag with the bulb and the biscuits. He warns you not to crush the digestives. He says this every time, as if you live with a pet badger. Before you leave, another customer comes in for paraffin and a newspaper. He asks whether the football coupons have come. Mr. Higgins answers, fetches the paper, and also settles a question about washing powder. This is how the shop folds around the day. One person arrives for tea, another arrives for gossip disguised as sugar. A third comes for stamps and leaves knowing who has bought a new carpet. The carpet itself may then be judged at the fence by Mrs. Grimshaw. She will know whether it is Axminster or pretending. She will also know what it cost, give or take the retail price. You nod goodbye and push open the door with your shoulder. The bell rings again above you. Outside, the air feels cooler after the warm shop, and the bread bag gives off a faint sweet yeast smell. You walk home with the careful pace required by a loose light bulb. In one hand, the paper handles cut a little into your fingers. In the other, your purse now feels lighter, but no easier to understand. The old money has not improved during your visit. It has merely rearranged itself into fresh confusion. Later at the kitchen table, you will empty it again and marvel at what remains. There will be a halfpenny you could not have sworn existed. There will be a shilling that feels newly suspicious. There may even be a farthing lurking like a very tiny joke from Queen Victoria. Back at the gate, Mrs. Grimshaw appears for the second time today. Timing is her true gift. She asks whether Mr. Higgins still has those nice tinned pears while studying your bag for evidence. You say he has tinned pineapple and grapefruit in syrup. She says modern food is all very well, but one cannot live on novelty. This is comforting since almost nobody is being asked to try. Inside the house, the hallway carries the same coal dust and boiled vegetable smell as before. Nothing has changed in your absence, except the important fact of bread. That is enough to make the place feel settled again. You set the bag on the kitchen table beside the sugar jar. The gas cooker rattles softly. Somewhere in the front room, the television crouches in its corner like a patient dark cupboard awaiting evening's orders. You take out the loaf first and press the paper gently. The crust is thin and springy through the wrapper. Then come the biscuits, which have survived, and the bulb, which has also survived, which feels almost professional. Finally, you open the purse and look at the survivors. 2 pennies, a 3-penny bit, 1 coin you identify only by long acquaintance and trust. Shopping has ended, but the sums continue to float about the room. This is the strange calm of ordinary life in 1965. You can run a household, stretch a roast, and remember everyone's birthday. Yet, a loaf of bread still asks you to perform number tricks fit for a civil service exam. Still, the system works because everyone around you helps it work. Mr. Higgins remembers. You pretend to remember. The coins clink along. The book waits quietly behind the counter for next time. And there will be a next time very soon. Tea runs low with suspicious speed. Biscuits vanish when visitors appear. Light bulbs fail mostly on Sundays, because British objects respect tradition when it inconveniences you most. For now, though, the loaf is home and supper can proceed. You put the kettle on and listen for its small growing murmur. Outside, somewhere beyond the hedge, Mr. Higgins is still adding figures in that steady pencil hand. Soon enough, the BBC will decide the evening mood for the whole country. Then later it will decide bedtime as well, with that same mild authority. Until then, you have bread, enough coins for uncertainty, and 1 more line in the book. On Sunday morning, the high street looks as if someone has gently turned the volume down. You stand at the front window in your dressing gown. The glass is cool under your fingers. The road is almost empty, and even the pigeons seem to walk with better manners. Inside the house, the hallway carries its usual mixed Sunday smell. There is coal dust from the grate. There is boiled cabbage from yesterday. There is also the faint promise of beef beginning to warm in the kitchen. The semi-detached houses along your road seem to agree on the same plan. Curtains twitch once, a back door closes softly. Then the whole row settles into a careful legal sort of quiet. Sunday in 1965 is not merely quiet by habit, it is quiet with official support. The law has already decided that shopping is a weekday activity. Today, the nation will make do. If you need a saucepan, you will not be buying one. If you need a pair of socks, they can wait. If you need a cheerful packet of biscuits at 11 o'clock, the law gently suggests you should have planned better. The shops in town are shut with a firmness that feels almost personal. Metal grills sit behind dusty windows. Handwritten cards say closed Sunday. They look as if they expect no argument. Even the places that might possibly help have a way of failing with dignity. The chemist may have a hatch. The hatch may also be shut. Your urgent aspirin has chosen its moment cleverly. This is the Sunday silence at work. Every item becomes desperately necessary only after Saturday closing time. A light bulb dies, the milk turns, a button comes off your best cardigan with theatrical timing. Mr. Higgins at the corner shop is no use to anyone today. His blinds are down, his door is bolted. His sacred tick book is resting behind the counter, like a sleeping dragon made of unpaid tea and tinned peaches. His shop works rather like a 1960s Amazon Prime account. Your delivery arrives sometime after his second cup of tea. Your credit limit depends entirely on whether he approves of your face. On Sunday, even Mr. Higgins cannot rescue you with suspicious spam. He would if he could. He recommends spam with the warm conviction of a man describing a seaside sunset. But the law has sent him home. You can feel the closure in your own pantry. You open the cupboard twice, although nothing new will appear. A jar of pickled onions stares back. Half a packet of rice looks apologetic. There is one lonely tin of salmon. The town center has the look of a stage set before the actors arrive. The bus comes less often. The ironmonger's windows are dim. The sweet shop has gone from temptation to pure decoration. Most amusements have folded themselves away as well. The dance hall is shut. The little places that sell ice cream are not in a hurry. Even fun has accepted reduced hours. The pub may open later, and only within its careful Sunday times. Drink is allowed in measured little windows. Even leisure must clock in and out properly. Britain loves a timetable, especially for pleasure. So the day turns inward. You stop thinking about errands. You begin thinking about the roast. The roast has been waiting for this moment since yesterday's trip to the butcher. The beef went into the oven early, before the house had fully woken. You lifted it from brown paper. The kitchen felt cold around your ankles. The gas cooker rattled as if clearing its throat for duty. Sunday lunch is less a meal than a national understanding. Somewhere, all across Britain, joints of meat are warming in ovens. Potatoes are being peeled by the pound. Gravy thoughts are already moving quietly through millions of heads. In your Formica kitchen, the work begins in a steady order. The table is still clear. The knives are lined up. A bowl waits for carrot peelings with the patience of an old friend. You peel potatoes into a damp sink and listen to the radio murmur. The peels curl like long ribbons. Your hands grow chalky with starch. The tap drips in slow agreement. The roast has rules that nobody wrote down because nobody needed to. Beef brings Yorkshire pudding. Lamb invites mint sauce. Pork expects applesauce. Each meat arrives with its old companion like a married couple at a church social. You would no more serve Yorkshire pudding with pork than wear beach sandals to a funeral tea. It could be done. The sky would probably remain in place, but people would remember. So the potatoes are parboiled first, then shaken in the pan to roughen their edges. Later they will go into hot fat. They will come out with crisp corners and soft middles, which is one of civilization's quieter achievements. Carrots are sliced into coins. Cabbage is cut and washed. Peas wait in a saucepan, looking almost too bright for Sunday. Parsnips, if you have them, make the house smell gently sweet as they roast. The beef gives off a smell of warm fat and pepper. Every now and then you open the oven door. Heat brushes your face. You spoon drippings over the top with the careful pleasure of a person doing something approved. There is usually one jar on the table that almost nobody touches until today. Horseradish waits in the cupboard all week like a stern aunt. On Sunday, it finally gets its little moment beside the beef. The gravy matters more than many public policies. It must be hot. It must be enough. It must be passed before the peas start sliding toward the rim of the plate. Plates may be warmed near the oven so the meal keeps its dignity. The carving knife is set out. The good serving spoon appears from the drawer. Sunday has a way of finding the household's better manners. Grimshaw appears over the garden fence exactly when the potatoes are at their most needy. She has never met a difficult moment she could not improve by observing it. Her voice arrives before her face. She asks whether you paid too much for the joint. She somehow knows the butcher's current prices. She also knows, with no evidence at all, that your carrots were a little firmer last week. You answer politely while keeping one eye on the oven. Mrs. Grimshaw smiles with a brightness that should come with a warning card. Then she mentions that her sister always warms the gravy boat first. This is the sort of advice Sunday encourages. It is low, steady, and impossible to fight. You nod as though warm gravy boats have been your deepest concern since childhood. In a way, today they almost are. By late morning, the house smells completely committed to lunch. Coats will soon go on. Shoes will be checked. Yet, the roast keeps working away in the kitchen because Sunday can ask you to attend church and baste beef in the same breath. You wash your hands and go upstairs to change. The bedroom is cooler than the kitchen. A good shirt waits on the chair. Sunday clothes always feel slightly stiffer, as if they know they are being inspected. Your best things are not especially grand. They are simply less forgiving. A tie sits where it should. Buttons remain fastened. Shoes are polished enough to suggest effort, even if last night's brushing was brief and strategic. For women, the process has its own calm ceremony. A cardigan is chosen with care. Stockings are checked for disaster. A hat, if worn, sits with exactly the sort of modest determination Sunday seems to admire. Children are brushed, buttoned, and coaxed into respectability by degrees. Hair is damp from the comb. Knees are scrubbed to the point of surrender. Socks creep down at once, because socks feel no respect for religion. Church on Sunday is not always a matter of fierce conviction. Often it is a matter of appearing where one is expected. Belief may be private and varied. Attendance is wonderfully public. You go because your parents went. You go because the neighbors notice. You go because not going requires its own explanation, and explanations are tiring before lunch. Sometimes tradition is simply the easiest coat to put on. The walk there has a special Sunday pace. Front gates click shut. A few families move along the pavement together. Everyone is dressed a little more carefully than usual, though nobody mentions the effort. Outside the church, there is a low murmur of greetings. People ask after colds, cousins, and last week's weather. A child drops a glove. A man pats his pockets for spectacles that are already on his nose. Inside, the air smells of polish, old books, and faint damp stone. The pew cushions have their own tired shape. Hymn books wait in racks, sturdy and serious, as if entertainment has been formally excluded. You slide along a pew and settle with a rustle of coats. The wood is smooth where many hands have touched it. Somewhere behind you, a throat is cleared with impressive commitment. Sunday is full of tiny official sounds. Much of church is also social bookkeeping in a softer hat. Who is present is noted. Who is absent is noticed. A missed Sunday can travel through 3 streets by tea time and return with improved details. Mrs. Grimshaw naturally attends with deep concentration on all visible matters. She can sing the hymns and assess the congregation at the same time. It is a rare gift. One feels it should perhaps be used for air traffic. You may listen closely to the sermon. You may also spend part of it thinking about the potatoes. This is not considered ideal, but it is extremely common. The Almighty has probably heard worse mental company than roast timing. The collection plate comes by with a gentle clink of old money. You drop in a few coins and immediately wonder whether you have given too little or too much. Pre-decimal coins turn every moral act into a small arithmetic fog. A farthing, a 3-penny bit, a shilling, a florin, a half-crown. They sit in the hand like a puzzle invented by a cheerful goblin. You are never fully sure whether you have supported the parish or attempted to purchase it. After the service, people drift out slowly, because leaving too briskly would look odd. There are handshakes and nods. There is weather talk again. There is also a careful glance at watches, because the beef does not pause for fellowship. Back home, the kitchen heat greets you at the door. Glass on the oven has gone misty. The whole house seems relieved that everyone has fulfilled the public part and may now return to gravy. Lunch gathers itself with a kind of domestic authority. The tablecloth is straightened. Cutlery is set in its proper order. Salt and pepper stand ready like tiny formal guests who always arrive first. Carving is performed with more ceremony than most office work. The first slice tells you whether the timing was right. Steam rises in a pale ribbon. The knife makes that firm, satisfying sound against the board. There is a proper sequence to the plate. Meat first, then potatoes, then Yorkshire pudding if beef is present, and never if it is not. Vegetables fill the remaining space, while gravy goes over almost everything without fear. People have opinions about these arrangements, and they hold them quietly but completely. The pudding must not drown. The peas should stay mostly in place. Mint sauce must not wander onto the beef unless invited. When it is done well, the meal settles the whole day. You feel warm and slightly heavy in the best possible way. The windows may mist a little. The cutlery clinks softly. Nobody urgently needs a sandwich. Afterward comes the slower part. Plates are stacked near the sink. A pan of hot water begins its patient work. The room grows still except for rinsing, the ticking clock, and one chair being pushed back with a Sunday sort of scrape. Then arrives the famous Sunday afternoon, which is not exactly exciting and is not meant to be. It stretches before you with a solemn face. The nation has eaten. Now it will rest, visit, stroll, doze, and wait for Monday. This boredom has structure, which makes it almost respectable. You are not supposed to seek thrills. You are supposed to fill the hours with approved, quiet occupations. Britain can turn idleness into a timetable if given a free hand. You might begin with the washing up and kitchen putting right. Leftover meat is wrapped for later. The Yorkshire pudding, if any survives, cools on a plate. The gravy boat is cleaned with the care due to useful old allies. Later there may be cold slices of beef for tea. There may be pickles. There may be bread and butter cut into neat pieces. Sunday likes the idea that one meal can carry part of the next on its back. The afternoon paper, if bought in time, opens like a small piece of furniture. It is broad, inky, and wonderfully slow. You read bits of it in stages, folding and refolding the pages with the skill of a sailor handling canvas. Someone may fall asleep in an armchair before page 3. This is normal and almost ceremonial. A hand rests on the paper. A chin drops to the chest. The fire clicks quietly in approval. If the weather behaves, there may be a walk. Not a brisk sporting march, just a proper Sunday walk, in good shoes, with hands behind backs, and children told not to splash in anything. The town itself seems to stroll. Gardens are looked at over hedges. Lawns are judged silently. Daffodils are admired with measured warmth. You pass shut shops again, which somehow makes them seem even more shut than before. The parks and footpaths fill with the same mild idea of movement. Families drift along. Dogs pull a little. Older couples walk in neat pairs, as if they have been doing so since before clocks were invented. If rain sets in, the approved list changes, but does not improve dramatically. You can write letters. You can mend a hem. You can sort a drawer that has not asked for attention in months. Some people play cards, though not too rowdily. Some tattle a jigsaw on the dining table. Some polish shoes for Monday, which is a deeply British way of spending leisure, like using a picnic to reorganize your filing cabinet. Children are expected to occupy themselves without becoming too audible. They may read comics quietly. They may build things from old boxes. They may also stare out of the window and discover the ancient human art of being a little bored. That boredom has edges worn smooth by repetition. It is not distressing. It simply hums. It teaches you the exact speed of the clock in the front room and the exact sound of pipes cooling behind the wall. Now and then you remember an item you urgently need tomorrow. Ink, shoelaces, a packet of tea. Sunday receives this thought with blank composure because every shop in Britain remains legally committed to ignoring your personal crisis. The black and white television sits in the corner of the front room like a small, dignified altar. It has occupied a great deal of space for an object that offers so few choices. Sunday makes even that modest choice feel narrower. If the set is on hire purchase, It carries a faint practical tension. It is the original buy now, pay later plan. The shop could, in theory, come and reclaim it if payments failed, which gives ownership a slightly rented expression. Still, it is yours for the afternoon, and the BBC is ready to supervise your mood. Sunday programming does not aim to jolt or dazzle you. It aims to improve you gently, whether you asked or not. The announcer speaks in calm, received tones that seem to iron the nation as he talks. He does not raise his voice. He simply states what comes next, and millions accept it as settled fact. On weekdays, the wireless already tells you what kind of morning you are having. The home service is rather like Spotify, except you choose nothing at all. It judges you very softly if you switch off during the bulletin. On Sunday, that guiding hand becomes even firmer and more pious. There will be hymns. There will be talks. They will be the kind of music that makes you sit a little straighter without quite knowing why. Sometimes there is a service from a church far away. You watch or listen to strangers singing earnestly in black and white. The picture may waver a little. The sound comes through with a soft, boxy dignity. Sometimes a serious man discusses moral questions at a careful pace. Sometimes there is choral music that seems to float through the room and settle on the lampshade. Even nature programs seem to move more quietly on Sunday. Nobody expects uproar from the BBC on this day. That would be vulgar and oddly energetic. Sunday television belongs to religion, improvement, and faces that look as if they have washed especially thoroughly. You may not pay full attention, and that too is part of the ritual. The set glows in the corner. Someone knits. Someone turns a page. Someone asks whether there is any more tea in the pot. Tea itself arrives with modest certainty as daylight fades. Pickles appear again. Bread is sliced. The meal is lighter than lunch, though still arranged with the same small rules about plates, napkins, and crumbs. Outside, the road remains sparse and careful. A bicycle goes by. A bus sighs at the corner. Somewhere a church bell marks the hour, and the sound travels farther because nothing much competes with it. Inside, the front room becomes warmer than the rest of the house. The Axminster carpet holds the day's footsteps. The sofa smells faintly of furniture polish and old wool. Teacups leave little moons on saucers. By evening, the whole country seems to have accepted its own stillness. You can almost imagine it from above. Streets dimming, curtains closing, wireless sets murmuring, countless sinks being drained after tea. The BBC announcer returns again with the same quiet control. He tells you what has been on. He tells you what comes next. He may as well be telling the moon when to rise. The final programs on a Sunday often feel less like entertainment and more like being tucked in by a stern but kind uncle. There may be an epilogue, there may be another hymn. There will certainly be no wildness. This is the strange comfort of the day. Everything has been limited for you. The shops were shut. The meals were decided. The route of the hours was marked out in advance, like footsteps pressed into soft earth. You did not spend Sunday choosing among 1,000 options. You moved through a smaller, tidier set of duties and pleasures. Roast beef, polished shoes, church chatter, a walk, a doze, the BBC, a careful cup of tea. It could be dull, certainly. It often was. Yet its dullness had shape, and shape can be restful when the rest of life feels busy and full of loose ends. By the time the house settles for the night, the coal smell has faded a little. The kitchen is in order again. Tomorrow's clothes are ready. Monday waits beyond the curtains, but not quite yet. For now, there is only the hush of the Sunday house. The pipework clicks once. A stair creaks as the warmth leaves it. Somewhere next door, Mrs. Grimshaw closes a cupboard with final and approving force. And then the country, having observed its many little rules without much complaint, goes gently still. You stand in the kitchen cupboard gloom, with one hand on the shelf edge and the other on ambition. Behind the bird's custard and the tinned peaches sits a small Vesta curry box. It promises India by tea time and asks only for hot water and trust. The box is bright in a way the cupboard is not. It glows beside beige tins like a postcard from somewhere warmer than Wolverhampton. You turn it over and read every line as if revising for an exam. 12 minutes seems very little time to reach the subcontinent from a Formica kitchen. The rattling gas cooker clicks and catches behind you. A faint smell of coal dust and boiled cabbage hangs in the hallway beyond the door. The front room is quiet, except for the black and white television humming to itself. It sits in its corner like a small, dignified altar, waiting for evening worship. You bring the packet to the counter with a feeling of mild daring. It is not unlike buying a hat in a color nobody in your family approves. Mrs. Grimshaw appears at the garden fence exactly as you tear the top strip open. She has a way of arriving at moments when both hands are occupied. She asks, far too casually, whether you are having one of those foreign packet meals. She already knows what you paid and suspects it was more than sensible. Inside the box are smaller packets with crisp folded corners. There is rice, a sauce mix, and little raisins that look surprised to be involved. The directions are stern and cheerful at once. They assume you own a saucepan and a willingness to call powder a meal. You tip the rice into boiling water and watch it circle slowly. The grains bob like tiny pale boats on a very untroubled sea. Then you open the sauce packet and meet the smell. It is sweet, warm, and faintly dusty, like a spice shop imagined by a carpet salesman. There is curry powder, certainly, and a note of onion. There is perhaps turmeric, though nobody in your street would say so with confidence. You stir carefully with a wooden spoon stained by many stews. The sauce thickens fast and becomes a determined shade of sunset brown. It does not smell like anything your mother cooked. That is exactly the point, and also the entire risk. Vesta makes you feel modern, without requiring a passport. It is travel by saucepan, which suits Britain rather well. Many households have never seen Bombay or Delhi and barely know how to spell them. Still, the cardboard says the world can visit after the washing up. You spoon the curry over the rice and add the raisins as instructed. Their sweetness gives the dish an odd little wink. There may be almonds in some versions, if the grocer is feeling grand. Mr. Higgins recommends them with the gravity of a surgeon discussing a transplant. He also recommends tinned ham in nearly every situation. Declining spam still seems to hurt him on a personal level. At his counter, you once asked for the Vesta by name and lowered your voice. It felt a bit like ordering contraband, though much starchier. Then came the coins, of course. You offered a muddle of shillings, a florin, and something that may have been enough to buy the entire county. Mr. Higgins sorted them without looking down. He keeps the tick book with the calm precision of a man running a tiny empire. The corner shop is basically a 1960s prime account with stricter judgment. Delivery arrives after his second tea and depends on your visible respectability. Back at home, you eat the curry from a warm plate with a knife and fork. Nobody suggests a spoon, because that would be anarchy. The sauce is gentle and thick and not especially fierce. It tastes of faraway places, translated patiently for people who prefer gravy. You are meant to feel sophisticated while eating it. This is easy because the bar for sophistication is currently any food served from more than one packet. Convenience itself has become a sort of household virtue. A modern kitchen should save effort, even when it creates new kinds of washing up. Your cupboards prove the point every time you open them. There are tins within tins and packets tucked behind packets like careful paper bricks. A neat row of soup waits for days when nobody can think. Tomato, oxtail, mushroom, and one suspicious cream of celery hold the line. There are tinned peas with labels the color of school paint. There are salmon tins that need a special key and a calm disposition. A packet of instant mashed potato leans beside dried stuffing mix. It looks practical and a little sad, like a sensible shoe. Yet these things are not shameful. They are signs you have joined the future and intend to keep up. Advertisements tell you that wise women no longer peel, soak, chop, or fret. Science will do most of that while you keep your hair neat. The kitchen itself agrees with this bright new message. The Formica worktop wipes clean in one firm pass and seems proud of it. The gas cooker rattles like a busted idol, though you forgive it. It can heat soup, toast crumpets, and threaten pastry all in one afternoon. There is pleasure in opening a fresh packet cleanly. The paper gives way with a small dry sigh that sounds almost efficient. A tin opener clacks around a rim with its own steady rhythm. It is not fast, but it feels official. Your mother might have soaked pulses or rolled pastry with stern patience. You, meanwhile, can produce fish fingers in very little time at all. This is sold as liberation, and perhaps some of it is. At the very least, it leaves room to sit down with tea before someone asks for pudding. Even the words on the packet sound brisk and capable. Instant, quick, easy, new, improved, family size, serving suggestion, all marching in cheerful file. You are not expected to wonder what improvement means. The important thing is that the future apparently comes in powdered form. Mr. Higgins stocks dried potato, packet soup, and a mousse that arrives by lorry and leaves by hope. He praises each one as if he invented modernity himself. Sometimes he offers a new tinned product with solemn secrecy. It is like being handed state papers, except they contain frankfurters and brine. You buy them because nobody wants to seem left behind. Britain in 1965 is very keen on catching up with tomorrow. At home, the cupboards become a museum of this feeling. Glass jars hold coffee that is not really coffee but tries hard. There is tea in caddies, sugar in a bin, and biscuits hidden from children. The biscuit tin itself is never where you last placed it. On weekdays, you still peel potatoes and trim sprouts and brown onions in fat. Yet the packets wait nearby like eager junior clerks. A can of spaghetti and sauce can rescue a weary lunch. So can baked beans, which are really the quiet civil service of the British table. No one calls these foods glamorous in plain daylight, but under the warm kitchen lamp, they seem reassuringly advanced. They are the sort of progress you can stack by expiry date. It is easier than building a motorway and rather more useful at 6:30. Now and then you imagine a house entirely run by packets. Breakfast from a box, dinner from a tin, pudding whipped from dust. Then you remember the family and their opinions. Progress must still taste of home, or at least of onions and gravy. That is where the hostess trolley enters like a wheeled social ambition. It glows in the dining room corner beneath a crocheted mat. The trolley is not for ordinary Tuesdays. It is for evenings when the good glasses come out and everyone speaks more carefully. Its padded top lifts with a little ceremony. Inside are heated shelves designed to keep food warm without drying it to sorrow. You do not simply own a hostess trolley. You deploy it, which is a very different matter and almost military in its timing. Mrs. Grimshaw has seen one in a catalogue and now speaks of them often. She says they are terribly handy, which means she wants one. A trolley suggests middle-class ease and organized hospitality. It says your peas will arrive warm and your nerves may do as they please. Before a dinner party, you polish the cutlery and count the forks twice. Then you line serving dishes like aircraft waiting for permission. The meat rests under foil on one shelf. Potatoes go on another, behaving themselves in the soft, dry heat. Carrots sit in a covered dish with a knob of butter melting over them. The peas are already trying to roll into private regions. The beauty of the trolley is that it lets you appear unruffled. You can answer the door as if roast potatoes arrange themselves. In truth, you have been in the kitchen since mid-afternoon. The gas cooker has rattled through your plans like an old accomplice. A hostess trolley is part oven, part stage prop, and part social armor. It is also large enough to bump your shin with real conviction. Guests admire it in the approved manner. They lead slightly and say how clever these things are now. No one says the food tastes much the same as always. That would be poor form and also perfectly true. The trolley keeps everything warm while the men discuss rates and motors. It allows the women a few extra minutes to powder noses and breathe. This is sold as freedom too. Much of the decade seems devoted to inventing freedom that still needs plugging in. If the television has been bought on hire purchase, it watches these scenes with grave interest. Miss an installment, and modern life may be removed by appointment. That gives many parlors a quiet Saturday tension. Even the lampshades seem to hope the payment has gone through. Still, the dinner party proceeds with great steadiness. The trolley hums, glasses clink. Someone praises the gravy with almost civic pride. After the main meal comes the true heart of the matter. Pudding is where British confidence fully returns. You reach for the bird's custard as if shaking hands with an old friend. The yellow tin stands ready in its familiar place. Custard powder is less a product than a domestic law. It waits in the cupboard because there will always be something needing custard. Apple pie needs it. Sponge needs it. Tinned fruit especially needs it, as if peaches are not properly dressed without a warm yellow coat. You mix the powder with sugar in a cup first. Then you add a little cold milk and stir away every lump with care. The milk on the hob grows hot, but must not catch. You pour the pale paste in slowly and keep stirring until it thickens silkily. That first glossy turn is deeply satisfying. It feels like order restored after a day of small muddles. The smell is sweet and mild and instantly homelike. It fills the kitchen more kindly than any spice ever could. Bird's custard is not fashionable because it never stopped being useful. A household can change many habits and still cling warmly to custard. Then there is Angel Delight, which arrives like dessert from the space age. It comes in a packet and sets in the bowl with almost suspicious speed. You whisk it with milk until it fluffs into pink or butterscotch clouds. Children watch as if you are doing advanced chemistry. The flavor is hard to place, and nobody bothers trying. The point is that it is smooth, cold, sweet, and available in under 5 minutes. Its texture belongs somewhere between mousse and polite insulation foam. Yet everyone eats it with complete good faith. Jelly may appear too, often with fruit trapped inside like a formal arrangement. Trifle waits in reserve for larger gatherings and stronger constitutions. There are tinned pears, evaporated milk, and cream if fortune smiles. There are glaced cherries used sparingly, like rubies in a very cautious kingdom. Dessert in this decade likes to wobble, pour, or set. If it can be made ahead, so much the better. This is another quiet rule of the British kitchen. A good pudding should comfort first and intrigue only in very small amounts. Even the bowls feel familiar in the hand. Their thick rims and floral patterns have seen years of careful scraping. The teaspoons make a soft clink on china. The sound is almost part of the recipe. By now the evening wireless is muttering from another room. The BBC announcer guides the nation's digestion with calm authority. The home service is basically Spotify, except it chooses the mood and gently disapproves if you switch it off. Somewhere a man in a good tie has decided this is the proper time for light music. Pudding done, you put leftovers away in bowls with saucers on top. Actual lids are oddly scarce and seldom the right size. The cupboard door opens again to receive the remains of the day. Behind the custard and jelly cubes sits the wider truth of local eating, for all the packet curries and pineapple rings. The ordinary market town remains firmly attached to itself. The greengrocer offers what the season and lorry have agreed upon. You can buy potatoes in paper sacks and onions by the net. Carrots come with soil still clinging like a provincial accent. There are cabbages, sprouts, swedes, and leeks in their patient ranks. Cauliflowers appear like stern white wigs among the leaves. Tomatoes exist, though often with a faintly apologetic air. Lettuce comes mostly as a pale, tight heart that tastes of clean rainwater. Foreign vegetables are another matter entirely. Courgettes might as well be lunar minerals, for all your high street knows. Peppers are rare enough to sound boastful. Aubergines belong to magazines and people with adventurous friends in London. Garlic is not a kitchen staple here. It is a whisper from continental holidays, and perhaps from actresses with unusual curtains. If a recipe asks for garlic, many people simply ignore it. Life is complicated enough without introducing scented bulbs into the butter dish. Fresh herbs are equally elusive in the ordinary shop. Parsley appears sometimes, rather exhausted, and mint can be persuaded from a garden. Basil, coriander, and oregano sound less like cooking aids and more like distant cousins. Nobody expects them near the potatoes. Olive oil is not standing casually by the cooker. If you find any at all, it is likely in a chemist. There it sits in a medicinal bottle that suggests ears rather than salad. Pouring it over lettuce would seem reckless and faintly unhygienic. So flavor comes from what is at hand and understood: onion, pepper, mustard, parsley sauce, gravy browning, and the occasional brave shake of curry powder. This is why the Vesta box feels so grand in the cupboard. It smuggles novelty into a world otherwise built on suet and caution. You do not think of the food as dull while living inside it. You think of it as proper, filling, and what one has. There is comfort in the known shape of supper. Meat and 2 veg leave little room for philosophical difficulty. When something new arrives, it must be tamed gently. It must fit the plates, the timetable, and the opinions next door. Mrs. Grimshaw, for instance, mistrusts garlic without ever having met it. She says strong food repeats on one, which is a remarkably British form of foreign policy. She will, however, accept canned pineapple on a cheese stick at Christmas. That counts as sophistication because the pineapple came in rings. The market closes early and Sunday closes everything entirely. If you discover a need for cloves, milk, or a single onion, then you are simply meant to reflect. The Sunday silence is less a rule than a national weather system. Urgent cravings arrive exactly when every shutter in Britain is down. You stand at the sink and think about all this while rinsing plates. The hot water fogs the window over the small square garden. Outside, washing stirs on the line, and a train sounds faintly beyond the houses. Indoors, the kitchen holds its usual evening warmth. The Vesta box, now flattened, waits by the bin. It has delivered its idea of India, and done so with touching confidence. Tomorrow there may be chops, or fish fingers, or beans on toast if the day runs away. The grand revolution of taste proceeds in tidy, hesitant steps. For now, the cupboard is full, the dessert bowls are stacked, and the trolley can cool with dignity. You have fed the household according to the best strange rules available. Soon the BBC announcer will decide that the nation has had enough for one day. His voice will smooth the edges off the evening and gently put Britain to bed. And you, in your semi-detached kingdom of tins and powders, will feel quite equal to it. By 6:30, the front room has begun to feel like the true heart of the house. The coal fire has settled to a soft red glow. The faint smell of boiled cabbage still lingers from the kitchen. Your shoes press into the patterned Axminster carpet, which has the patient look of something brushed for visitors. In the corner stands the television set. It fills its place with a kind of solemn pride. It is all polished wood, curved glass, and careful promise, like a sideboard that learned to speak. You do not simply own it. You are still, in a quiet legal sense, courting it. Each month, money goes out for the installment. Each month you feel both modern and slightly watched. Hire purchase is the original buy now, pay later arrangement, except the shop may still decide the set belongs more to them than to you. That gives the television a faint air of rank. It is not just an object. It is a respectable ambition in cabinet form. Visitors notice it before they notice the mantel clock. They notice it before they notice the new curtains. Mrs. Grimshaw notices it before she has properly crossed your threshold, which saves time for everyone. She says the walnut finish is very smart. She says it in the same tone she uses for a neighbor's ambitious sponge cake. She also somehow knows the weekly payment, which remains one of the quiet mysteries of the Midlands. The set occupies its corner like a small, dignified altar. Chairs are turned toward it with more sincerity than toward some relatives. Even the aspidistra beside it appears to be paying attention. You keep the screen dusted with a soft cloth. You wipe fingerprints from the knobs with a little extra care. If a child wanders too near with jam on a finger, everyone in the room stiffens slightly. There are rules, though no one has written them down. Rules live best in houses when they are spoken once, then repeated forever. The television has collected more of them than the dining table. It is not switched on the moment someone fancies it. That would be vulgar and wasteful. It is switched on when the day has reached the proper shape for television. Tea things are cleared first. Cups are stacked. The formica table is wiped with a cloth that leaves a faint smell of soap and gas heat behind it. Only then does someone cross the room. A hand reaches for the knob with quiet ceremony. A soft click comes first, then the set wakes with a little sigh and a bright white dot. The picture swells slowly into being. It always seems surprised to find itself a picture at all. For a moment, everyone watches snow and lines, as if awaiting a telegram from the moon. No one says this out loud, but the person nearest the set holds a kind of temporary office, knob keeper, volume judge, fine-tuner of national life. You may be the one in charge tonight. That does not make you powerful exactly. It makes you responsible for every future complaint. If the picture rolls upward, it is your fault. If Auntie prefers the other channel, it is also your fault. If the sound is too low for Granddad and too high for the baby, you have failed several constituencies at once. The volume itself has a moral quality. It must be loud enough for hearing, yet never so loud it seems common. A television heard clearly from the street is considered merely a character flaw. So the sound sits in a narrow band of acceptability. It reaches the sofa and the armchair. It does not travel with confidence into the hallway. The children may sit on the floor. They settle cross-legged with biscuits and an optimism that carpet patterns encourage. Adults take the better chairs, because adulthood in 1965 is partly a matter of having earned upholstery. No one blocks the screen. No one rattles the newspaper at key moments. They crouch as they pass, performing a respectful half-duck before the glowing cabinet. There is also the matter of time. Daytime television exists, but not in the modern flood-tide way. It arrives in patches, like an aunt who visits when convenient and leaves before supper. This gives the machine an odd dignity. It is not begging for attention all day. It knows its worth and expects you to organize yourself around it. In the afternoon, if you happen to switch on early, you may be greeted by the test card. It appears with complete confidence, as if a small girl, a clown doll, and several colored shapes are thrilling entertainment. And somehow in that moment they are. The screen holds still. The room grows calm. Even the ticking mantel clock seems to settle into step with the striped pattern. The test card is not exactly a program. It is more like televised waiting, yet it has a soothing quality that many proper programs never achieve. You look at the neat circles and blocks. You listen to the hum. You begin to think this is perfectly sufficient as an afternoon companion, which perhaps says something about Britain, though no one feels pressed to decide what. A child can stare at it for several minutes with total commitment. An adult can pass by with mending and glance up as if checking on a patient relative. The clown doll looks faintly alarming, but in a familiar way. The test card asks nothing from you. It does not demand laughter or tears. It simply remains where it is, patient and square, until real broadcasting feels ready to begin. There is comfort in that patience. The house is full of things that wait without complaint. The iron waits, the good china waits, even the black telephone in the hall waits with stern self-control. When proper evening programs begin, the room subtly rearranges its loyalties. The television ceases to be furniture and becomes the question of the hour. BBC or ITV, those are the choices. Not dozens, not hundreds, two. This means choosing carries weight beyond reason. If one person prefers a play on the BBC and another wants a quiz on ITV, the matter becomes domestic diplomacy in cardigan form. Someone says, "Let us just see what is on the other side." This sounds neutral. It is never neutral. You turn the selector with a firm little twist. The picture changes. The room changes with it. Faces lift or fall in direct response to a broadcaster in London no one has ever met. The BBC feels proper. It feels brushed and punctual. It feels as if the announcer has clean cuffs and excellent handwriting. ITV feels livelier. It has advertisements, which are half irritation and half festival. People pretend to dislike them, then repeat them all week while buttering toast. The family politics begin before the program itself. Father may prefer the news read in a sober tone. The children may prefer something with songs, cowboys, or improbable hats. Mother might simply want the program least likely to cause argument while she finishes darning a sock. This is a rare and noble kind of statecraft. It seldom receives the honors it deserves. If guests are present, the rules change again. You offer them the better seat and a theoretical say in the channel. Usually they decline with false grace, hoping you will insist on their choice. Mrs. Grimshaw never declines with false grace. She names her preference at once. She also recalls an item she saw on the other side last Tuesday, which she insists everyone else missed. You smile and let her talk. She stands near the door with her handbag still on her arm. She says commercial television is dreadful, then asks you to switch over during the adverts because she likes that detergent woman. The children quickly learn the rhythms of negotiation. They hover near the set before the adults fully settle. They offer to adjust the picture, which is merely an opening move. Sometimes you strike a bargain. The younger ones may have 15 minutes of one thing before the grown-ups claim the evening. It has the flavor of constitutional monarchy, though with more cocoa stains. There are only 2 channels, yet this never feels simple. 2 channels can hold an astonishing amount of feeling. A household can divide itself neatly down the middle over 1 detective serial and 1 variety hour. On some nights, you switch back and forth until both programs have become impossible to follow. Then everyone blames the broadcasters for being confusing. This is a very British arrangement and therefore comforting. The knobs become warm under your fingers. The image trembles a little at each change. You return to the first channel with the sheepish expression of someone who has sampled too many puddings. The BBC announcer arrives between programs with that polished, weightless voice. He seems not to speak from a studio, but from the ceiling rose itself. He tells you what comes next as if describing weather that he personally arranged. You listen because everyone listens. He has that quiet authority which suggests the nation is a large boarding school, and he has the keys to the tuck cupboard. There is no appeal, and very little reason to want one. The wireless has trained you well already. The home service is basically Spotify, except you have no say in the playlist, and it judges you gently if you leave during the morning bulletin. Television extends the same arrangement into the front room. Someone else decides when you may watch. Someone else decides what counts as a suitable mood at 7:45. You accept this more easily than future generations might imagine. There is relief in not deciding everything. Decision is tiring, and there are potatoes to peel. Before supper, the set may remain off by principle. Electricity costs money. Idle staring is thought to soften the brain. Also, the front room looks tidier when the screen is blank and obedient. Children are often told they have had enough. Enough television, enough fidgeting, enough sitting too close and allegedly ruining their eyes forever. The exact safe distance remains a matter of family folklore. One parent says 6 feet. Another says farther. The child inches forward anyway, drawn by cartoon gravity and the deep wish to ignore advice. You may place a footstool as a boundary. It is not a legal fence, but it has legal ambitions. The younger ones lean against it, like prisoners of entertainment. The set is also not switched on during meals. Meals belong to the table. The table belongs to manners. The television must wait its turn, like everyone else. So supper is eaten in the kitchen, with the rattling gas cooker behind you. The smell of onions, gravy, and overcooked peas hangs warm in the air. Through the doorway, the dark screen waits in the front room with saintly patience. Later, when plates are rinsed and tea towels folded, the evening can properly begin. A lamp is switched on beside the sofa. Curtains are drawn against the dim spring light outside. That act of drawing the curtains matters. It seals the room gently from the street. The world beyond becomes damp paving, privet hedge, and the occasional bicycle bell. Inside, the set glows stronger. Faces become silvered and soft in black and white. Everyone looks faintly more serious, even while watching a comedian in a silly hat. The television gives status not only because it is expensive. It gives status because it gathers people. It allows a household to say, with modest pride, that this is where things are seen. A neighbor without a set might come round for a big event. An aunt with a smaller set might admire your picture quality while pretending not to. You nod in the tone of someone who has compared valves and reception with grave expertise. The cabinet doors, if your model has them, are opened like chapel gates. If it has no doors, you may still gesture toward the screen with the same feeling. Modern life is underway, and it is furnished in veneer. Of course, higher purchase means modern life also arrives in monthly bites. The envelope must be remembered. The figure must be found. The calendar carries a private little shiver near payment week. You might call at the shop with your installment after collecting other bits. Then the old coinage comes out in a confused, metallic handful. A florin, 2 shillings, 3 penny bits, and your dignity all jostle together at the counter. For one short moment, you are unsure whether you have paid correctly or purchased the premises outright. Mr. Higgins watches with patient eyes and perfect memory. His tick book behind the counter knows more about your finances than some close relations. He is also certain that tinned meat solves most household concerns. If you hesitate over the installment, he may recommend Spam with almost pastoral tenderness. He looks genuinely wounded if you decline. The corner shop runs on trust, gossip, and arithmetic. It is basically a 1960s Amazon Prime account, except delivery arrives after Mr. Higgins finishes his second tea and judges your character as satisfactory. Back at home, the television waits for evening and reward. Its screen reflects the lamp until you switch it on. Then its own light takes command of the room with calm confidence. During the day, though, the set still marks the house as up to date. Even when it shows nothing but the test card or a short close-down notice, it suggests a link with somewhere larger. London, the nation, the approved flow of events. That approved flow is strongest at night. Programs lead one into another with a kindly firmness. The announcer carries you onward, as if guiding a respectable queue through a station. You do not usually ask whether something else might be on. There isn't, not really. There are only the two channels, and one of them may be showing a thing no one wants. So you settle with what has been offered. This can feel limiting in theory and deeply restful in practice. No one scrolls endlessly, no one spends 20 minutes choosing, and then chooses fatigue. When music matters more than television, another small rebellion exists. Somewhere out on the sea, a ship broadcasts pop songs outside the neat BBC order. Radio Caroline slips through the air with a grin you can almost hear. You hear it on a transistor in the kitchen or in a teenager's bedroom. The sound has a crackling edge. It feels breezy and salt-touched, even in a Midland semi with a line of washing out back. The BBC offers songs by arrangement and in suitable portions. Radio Caroline offers them like contraband sweets from an older cousin. It is not exactly dangerous, though it likes to imagine itself that way. That is the great comfort of most rebellion in ordinary life. It remains tidy enough for tea at 7. You may hum along while peeling carrots and still be in bed on time. Perhaps the younger people in the house turn the wireless knob in search of it. Perhaps they keep the sound low, so the older generation cannot complain too accurately. The room fills with a singer the BBC has not personally approved. Even then, household rules survive. Music may be modern, but volume still has limits. A parent can forgive a beat more easily than a racket. No laughing too loudly after the little ones are supposed to be asleep. No banging the arm of the chair when a joke lands well. If someone wants the set after a certain hour, permission is often required. The phrase "if there's anything worth watching" carries much of the national emotional burden. It means maybe yes, probably no, and please do not argue. You become skilled at judging the room by sound alone. A cough from the hallway means the volume has crept up. A floorboard overhead means a child is listening from the landing instead of sleeping. There may be a final cup of tea poured during the last program. Biscuits appear from a tin with a soft clink. Crumbs gather on a saucer in the lamplight, while the announcer continues his serene management of British time. Outside, the street grows quieter. A bus passes less often. The hedge and the garden fence disappear into one dark shape. Grimshaw might still somehow be lurking with opinions. Inside, the television keeps everyone gently tethered. The same glow touches knitting wool, newspaper print, polished shoe leather, and the glass front of the china cabinet. Even silence in the room becomes shared silence. Then the evening narrows toward its official end. The announcer grows even more composed, if such a thing is possible. Programs conclude. Loose ends are not discussed much. The nation is being put away for the night. There is something almost nursery-like in this. The great machine says, "Now then, off we go." The grown adults of Britain obediently begin locating slippers and checking door bolts. The national anthem may arrive with extraordinary composure. You hear those first notes and know the argument is over. No third program will suddenly appear as a treat. This is bedtime by institution. A very senior headmaster has looked at his watch and found the day sufficient. The screen offers a final image, then a solemn kind of farewell. You might sit for a moment after it ends. The room feels oddly larger once the glow has gone. The cabinet becomes wood again, only wood, and the lamp resumes its local authority. Someone reaches over to switch it off fully. The click is small and final. The screen shrinks to that tiny bright dot once more, then lets it fade. That dot is strangely moving in its own plain way. It is the last little ember of the national evening. Then it is gone, and there is only your front room, your carpet, your clock, and the faint smell of coal dust in the hall. No one asks for one more episode. There is no one more episode. The channel has decided your bedtime was perfect calm, and most of the country accepts the verdict. You gather cups and smooth cushions. You check the back door. In the kitchen, the gas cooker gives one last tiny rattle as the metal cools. If some urgent need appears now, it will of course be the thing you cannot fetch until morning. Britain has a special talent for making light bulbs fail at the wrong hour. Some days simply formalize the joke. Upstairs, drawers slide softly, a tap runs for teeth brushing. The house settles into small domestic sounds, which seem louder now that the television has retired from public service. In bed, you can still hear a distant wireless from another house if the night is still enough. Perhaps someone is chasing Radio Caroline through the static. Perhaps someone else has already surrendered to sleep under the last approved tune of the BBC. Your own day feels neatly folded. The front room has done its work. The set in the corner has offered status, company, order, and a very firm hint. Tomorrow it will sit there again, polished and patient, like a cupboard with national influence. It will wait for the proper hour, the proper program, and the proper hand on the knob. And when evening comes, you will drift back to it almost without thinking. You will sit in your chosen place. You will lower your voice a little. You will let the glowing box decide, with immense courtesy, when Britain is awake enough, and when Britain has quite had enough. You can still see that last little stretch of evening as it settles back into place. The black and white set sits in its corner like a small, dignified altar. The screen has given you everything it means to give. Then the BBC, in its calm and rather parental way, decides that is quite enough for one nation. There was that familiar moment when the national anthem arrived without discussion. It was less a suggestion than a fact of nature. The picture grew still and formal. The faces and rooms and advertisements all withdrew. In their place came that neat, steady pattern which looked oddly restful at this hour. It was as if the television had changed into its nightclothes before your eyes. You stood there with one hand near the set. You already knew the next motion by heart. You reached for the wall socket and switched it off properly, because leaving it there humming faintly would have felt as wrong as leaving the front door on the latch all night. In 1965, there was no soft red standby glow. There was only on and off. Britain liked a firm ending. That was one of the small rules everybody kept without needing it written down anywhere. Another lovely little picture from tonight was the kitchen after that final click. The Formica worktop had gone cool. The rattling gas cooker had at last fallen quiet. You looked at each ring in turn, because one does not trust memory where gas is concerned. One blue flame left by mistake would have been the sort of thing Mrs. Grimshaw would somehow know about by breakfast, along with what you paid for the curtains and whether the mashed potatoes were a shade too wet. So you checked once, then you checked again. The rule was simple and deeply comforting. The knobs must point where the knobs ought to point. After that came the fire. You baked the coal carefully for the night. The red heart of it sat low behind a soft fall of ash. The smell was warm and dusty and faintly sweet. It drifted into the hallway with that old mixture of coal dust and boiled vegetables that seemed to belong to the whole country. It was not glamorous. It was only home. Then there was the street itself, perhaps the gentlest moment of all. 10:30 had passed, and the whole row of semi-detached houses seemed to draw one long, quiet breath together. No one was scrolling. No machine in the house wanted your attention every 6 seconds. There was no late ping from a pocket. There was only the small tick of cooling pipes, the far-off sound of a car taking its time, and maybe one last door shutting with the kind of politeness a street learns over many years. Even the patterned Axminster carpet underfoot seemed to hush your steps for you. Beyond the curtains, the pavement lay empty. A bicycle leaned where it had been left. Somewhere a blind was pulled down. Somewhere else a bedroom light went out. The day had not faded so much as been formally signed off by a voice in London who had decided, on behalf of everyone, that the nation had now had enough excitement for one Tuesday. And now the whole thing can soften even further into that deep and ordinary comfort that only an old house at night seems to know. The rooms are not dramatic when they go quiet. They simply become themselves again. The front room keeps a little stored warmth. The kitchen gives off the last faint trace of supper and gas and washed-up cups drying by the sink. The stairs hold one cool patch in the middle where your foot always finds it. Upstairs, the bed has that slightly weighty feel of blankets prepared hours ago. The sheets are smooth in some places, and a touch rumpled in others. They are not trying to impress anyone. They are simply waiting. Outside, the English street has reached that total hush which belonged to the years before every house carried a small glowing world in its hand. A late bus may move somewhere far away. A fox may consider its evening business with great seriousness. Yet near at hand there is almost nothing at all. That nothing is the comfort of it. The black television screen stays black. It asks for no more from you. The wall socket remains switched off with a kind of moral neatness that would have pleased your mother, your aunt, and quite possibly the wiring itself. Downstairs, the fire sits safely under its ash. The gas rings are all dark. The doors are shut. The small, unfinished tasks of the day have lost their importance. What remains is only the pleasant weight of the house around you. Then, from the bedroom wireless, the BBC home service goes on in a lower and friendlier register. It is essentially Spotify, except you have absolutely no say in the playlist, and it thinks this is probably good for your character. The voices come through with that gentle, grainy softness that belongs to late radio. A bit of talk, a little music, a weather note that no longer matters tonight. The announcer sounds as though he is seated in a tidy room, wearing a proper jacket and speaking to the whole country, one bedside table at a time. You do not need to follow every word now. The words can pass by like warm water. They are only there so the quiet never feels empty. They keep you company for a few more minutes, while the night lays itself down over the street, over the little front garden, over the coal shed, over Mr. Higgins and his miraculous belief in tinned meats, over every carefully switched-off television in every decent sitting room, from the Midlands to the sea. And at last, even Mrs. Grimshaw's back-room light goes out, which is the closest thing your street ever gets to an official all-clear. May your dreams be entirely free of pre-decimal arithmetic. May your aspic jelly set perfectly and symmetrically by morning. May Mrs. Grimshaw never discover what you actually paid for those curtains. Thank you for listening. Keep your thoughts light, and good night.